All right, we'll go ahead and get started. If you don't know me, my name is Dan Baker. I'm the President and CEO of Randolph County United. And with us today, we have individuals from the Housing Resource Hub. I think over the last, 10 months or so, maybe longer, that you guys have been doing this. We have been working with the Housing Resource Hub as a county through one of our steering committees. If you were on that steering committee, can you please raise your hand? Okay. So these individuals have maybe already seen some of this stuff, but what they're going to explain what they're doing, but actually just taking a look at all the surveys and other things that they have done is actually pretty amazing work. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Heather and let her introduce the team, and then we'll kick it off from there.
Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for coming out for a long, what will sound like a long session. Hopefully it'll be a very productive session. I'm Heather Presley-Cowan, and I'm with the Housing Resource Hub in Northeast Indiana. And in a minute, I'm going to, ask you to share about who you are. But we have Ryan Chasey here. Ryan oversees our housing development projects. I'll tell you a little bit about how we're different than a lot of nonprofits. And then Madison Morrison is our project coordinator. And so if it sounds like we're not planners, then you're right, we're not planners. We have been working, for about somewhere around 10 months. It seems like Ryan and I were here doing talks for a long time, and in fact, we've been working in Union City.
Many years,
yeah. It's awesome to come back here. But as we delve into this idea of a housing strategy, one of the things we like to say is that we do not produce paper documents. We like to produce houses, which is unique, and the model that we use is unique, and so we'll walk through a little bit of that. We're going to start off with sharing the results of a market potential analysis that we did, and then Ryan's going to round out the afternoon in the second hour with working with you to figure out where should we begin. I know from conversations with your steering committee, there's already a lot of work already going on, which is wonderful. But what we want to do is get into the next leg of this, which is the plan is just the beginning, but implementation and execution's everything. The steering committee selected you to come out and be a part of this because we need your help. We're going to need your horsepower to drive this forward. And I guess maybe I'll start with a question. How many think that housing's not an issue in Randolph County? Okay, so we all can agree that we have an issue. Nationally, yes. Indiana, yes. But certainly here in Randolph County. We're going to talk about what can happen if you take action. Before we do that, though, by a show of hands, how many are elected leaders? Awesome. Says a lot. How many are realtors? Awesome. How many are developers? Any developers? Awesome. Builders? Maybe you don't consider yourself a developer. All right. How many are from the USDARD? So good to see you. What did I miss? Bankers? Do we have bankers? Did I call bankers? Oh, yes. Anyone not raise their hand yet? Yes.
Community Foundation.
Wow, Community Foundation. Okay. Awesome. Anybody else not pick called yet? Or raise their hand? Awesome. So this is the perfect mix and combination. I can tell you we've been in rooms, we've done a lot of housing strategies at this point, but when we go into a room and we don't see elected officials in the room, I get nervous. You're going to see that at the epicenter of this is why our parent entity is called High Performance Government Network. Some people think that's an oxymoron, but it's not. But the idea is that we really work with local governments to really make things happen. So we're going to talk about your countywide housing market potential. Then Ryan's going to talk about opportunities and barriers to getting into actual housing production, and talk a little bit more about a call to action on how we can get started and what's going to happen next, because we stay with communities for a full 2 years, and the reason for that is it takes about that long to get to the place where we start to see housing coming out of the ground. I can tell you Ryan's going to talk about a couple of projects later on, but it often takes us much more than 2 years. but we've been able to expedite it, and certainly with the state of Indiana and the tools that it's putting in place for communities, they're moving a lot faster than they used to. So, high performance housing, when we talk about this approach that we're using, it's called the HOME method, aptly named, housing optimization through market empowerment. And essentially what we do is we combine two circles. One is the community's wants, needs, and desires. So for the last several months, we've worked with a local steering committee selected by your local leadership to identify basically what we understand to be the issue, to develop a communication strategy on how we're going to get you to the table, and to figure out what do we have that we can put on the table to say to the private sector and what it can do. So we want this, and this is what they can do. Our job is to push those two circles together, because usually when you have market potential, and I'm going to, spoiler alert, you have a lot of market potential here. When you have this kind of market potential, but you're not necessarily seeing development happening, there's a reason for that. And it's not because developers are trying to get rich, and it's not because communities aren't trying to invite them. Usually there are just a couple of things we have to put together to make that happen. So our roots, as I shared, we're in Northeast Indiana. We are located in Fort Wayne. And our region, 5 years ago, this is a tale of a region, 11 county region, found that we needed 21,000, we had 21,000 households every year circling around who wanted to move to or within that 10 county region. That's outside of Allen. So Allen's the big community. It's the second largest city. Thank you, Ryan. And when we did this, we learned why we have kind of funny notes here. I'm not sure why our graphics are moving, but we had each of those counties that had market potential for those 21,000 households. And when we learned that there was market potential, I guess since Huntington is highlighted here, Huntington may be able to take 9% of that market potential. So of those 21,000 households, we extrapolate it down, and all of a sudden, each of these communities can absorb a part of that market potential. We then started talking with those communities and saying, okay, if you want to take action, there are people who want to live here, and if you take action, there's a chance that you're going to see your community grow. Some of the communities may have even been losing population, and what we saw was everyone started signing up to do housing strategies. That's where our roots were. It's where we learned and perfected the methodology that we use. Now, the first year of our work together, first 9 months or so, is we launched the housing strategy itself. And it's really, the idea here is that we need to root in something different than what's currently in many communities. A lot of communities, we start with a plan. Anyone looked at a market analysis? Anybody do that on a regular basis? What does it do? It looks backward, right? I want to know how many people are lining up to live in this local apartment complex. Oh, we've got a waiting list this long. Or we had 5 buyers show up to purchase that one house that we had on the market. But what if we might be missing something? What if we might be missing the people who would come and want to buy or rent here if it were here, but it's not here, so we can't see them? And that's really what differentiates our housing strategies from others, where there are many communities that do a market analysis and say, look, we're shrinking and we're dying. When the reality is a lot of our housing stock, especially in Indiana, is old and tired, right? And right now it's fully absorbed. So there are people who may want to live here if we built this and priced it at that, but they can't see that, and so we can't measure it. And actually there is a way to measure it, and so I'll show you that. So we start this housing strategy by building a local leadership core to sort of vet this process to get to the place where we're calling you all together. We did a communication planning workshop where we said, okay, here are our key stakeholders we want to talk to. You were obviously in that list. And then we said, what are we going to need to talk to them about, right? So we do this market potential analysis, and we learn that there is a here in some cases, and in other cases a community may not have market potential. But what's really cool is we're going to not only tell you what your market potential is, but who are these folks? Do they want to buy or rent? How much can they afford? Now that group hears those market potential results before we come here. So there are many in this room who are on the steering committee who have already heard this information, but I'm a big believer in you have to hear things 7 times to really get it. And so if you're a steering committee member, you're hearing it maybe the, let's say third time, third time, but we're gonna say it a lot more because it needs to be the battle cry going forward. So we then have this, the Housing Symposium, where we come out to the community leaders and we say, okay, this is what we've learned, but before we take action, we need your role is to help us to champion this going forward. Before we wrap up this phase, Brian's going to get back together with the Housing Strategy Steering Committee in Madison and put together a project pipeline conversation. A program planning workshop is what we call it. Once we have an understanding of all the different projects that are possible in this county, we want to make sure that we then prioritize, because we've only got so much time, talent, and treasures, which ones are we actually going to champion to move forward? And Ryan's going to talk about the importance of catalyst projects later on, but that's what we're looking for is catalyst projects, larger projects that can really spark a flame. And then, hopefully, we do what Wabash, Indiana is doing now, and we start talking to the buyers. And we say, we're going to have a housing fair, and the realtors are going to come out, and we're going to have home designs to look at, because they're going to kick off a 44-unit development here very soon in Northeast Indiana, the first. But of all those projects that I showed you, all those dots on the map, there's about 1,000 housing units that are going in Northeast Indiana because of the housing strategies that are underway. And so I just want to say that to you to say, this is where we start. So the market potential analysis is, like I say, the epicenter of this first phase because it's a methodology that is tested. My background is I worked with the city of Fort Wayne, Indiana, the second largest city, for about 25 years. And I came there by way of Woodburn, Indiana, so I'm not considered a Fort Wayne resident because I can't call out a high school in Fort Wayne. But I can tell you that Fort Wayne had a lot of market potential in the early 2000s. And when I first shared it with the community leaders there, I like to say they laughed me off the stage because they could not believe that downtown Fort Wayne would ever, who would want to live in downtown Fort Wayne, right? And now today we've got $1 million units down there. But in 2004, they just couldn't wrap their brains around it. And I remember when we redid it in 2008 or 10, there was a developer who said, you know, I was one of the ones that laughed, and now I'm excited about what's going on. And so for those of you who have ears and can hear this, you'll get out of the gate and get going, because that market potential in Fort Wayne, it existed there for a good 7 or 8 years before we actually saw housing get developed. But for those who can hear it today, you could start today and start testing this market. So Zimmerman Voc Associates is who we work with to do these. It's who did it in Fort Wayne, and it stands true. They just updated theirs today, or not today, but this year. And the idea is that they specialize in doing market potential analyses. It's its own recipe for understanding market potential. So again, even if you're losing population, oftentimes communities that are losing population because more people, I don't know how to say it differently, but more people are dying than are being born. And so when you have that, then it looks like population loss, but in reality, there may be a different story to tell. So they focus on market potential, which is who wants to live here. It's kind of this invisible group of people until they reveal it. And then versus, it's not demand. It's not the people who are showing up for what you have on the market today. So just for instance, what's the median rent right now in Randolph County, would you say? If I wanted to rent an apartment here, what would I pay? Anyone? Just guess. 600? Okay. And wait, 500? $600. Okay. And if I wanted to buy a home here, let's say one was available, if I searched up Zillow today, what would I find for sale on the market today? 1 1/4, 125,000. Anybody ever been able to build a new home for $125,000? Definitely not happening nowadays. So let's delve into, again, the people who want to live here. Where do they live now? How many are likely to move here if we were to build it? Who are these folks? What are their housing preferences? How much are they likely to pay? What should those rents and prices be? And then how fast will they absorb? All the questions we might ask if I said, hey, there's this invisible group of people that you can't see today who want to live here. So today, for Randolph County, population 24,100. I'll just, one big one I want to point out here, median household income is $62,600. Now remember, $62,600, because I'm going to show you a little slide that kind of puts that into perspective. 84% of your units are single-family detached. 79% of your housing units overall are owner-occupied. And our median housing value, $116,000. So yep, 1.25 is about right for what housing sells for when it becomes available. Now, the breakdown of who lives here now, we have 42% who are the empty nesters and retirees, 36% are traditional and non-traditional, and then that 22% are the younger singles and couples. So 42% empty nesters and retirees, 58% millennials. So then this analysis, which is on our website, and we'll share that with you, yourhousingresource.org/Randolph, has each one of these communities. So the Housing Strategy Steering Committee said, let's highlight some of the larger communities throughout the county, and let's look at their current status. So we've got Winchester, 2,000 households, mostly 1- and 2-person households, 74% owner-occupied, and then you can see here, there's the $112,000 median value, single-family detached, 79%, and you can see one thing that I want to point out here is 18% have a bachelor's degree or better. One of the #1 indicators of quality of life is the education level of the people who want to move into your community. And so today, in the past, maybe people followed jobs, right? And then jobs followed people, all of that back and forth. And today, when we're talking about workforce housing, people follow people. So I might be a remote worker who can live anywhere. And so where am I going to want to move to? A place that has a great quality of life. And I think Midwest, and in fact, definitely Indiana, we have a real opportunity right now because as people who are living in much less affordable places, who have great jobs and are well educated and have lots of housing options, start to look around for where they want to live, they can come here and buy a house for 1.25. Wow, and I could walk to this kind of a downtown? Yes, the answer is yes. And so as we look at each one of these communities, we did this for Zimmerman Vogt, did this for each one of those communities. So median household income there, 42.3. You've got 9% with a bachelor's degree or better. Median housing value, 86.9. Parker City and Farmland, 1,180 housing units, 60% 1- and 2-person households, 18% with a bachelor's degree or better, median housing value 113.8. Then there's Lynn. So 64% 1- and 2-person households, median value 109.9, 11% have a bachelor's degree. And then there's Losentville. So 63% 1- and 2-person households. You can see 98 housing units, median value 116.2, and 19% have that bachelor's degree or better. So lots of potential wonderful small communities that someone could choose from. But where do these folks live that don't live here yet? Where are they coming from? And so what you can see, roughly half, 54%, already live in Randolph County. They just want to relocate. What do they want to do? They probably want to move up. They want to get a bigger house with a growing family. Or maybe they want to downsize to something that's more accessible. So maybe a main floor, maybe less square footage. So 54% already live here in the county and want to move around. And this is going to be big when we talk about market potential and adding housing. But then the other 46% are coming from other places. So 20% are kind of these, surrounding counties, right? Darke County, Ohio, we could actually have a net increase in population coming from our neighboring county in Ohio of 6%, and then 20% are from the balance of the US. And so when I talk about remote workers, or I don't even know, why are people wanting to live here? Going back to my Wabash example, the mayor of Wabash rolled out a down payment assistance initiative, one that we'll offer as one of the tools in your toolkit, but it has to be authorized by government. It's an awesome program. It'll offer up to 5% in down payment assistance. He was very excited. We did a press release and did a Facebook Live. Anyone know Mayor Long in Wabash? Awesome mayor, good person. Has a great Facebook following. And we, as a result of just announcing that he had this program, we started to see on the platform that we use, we saw people coming from all over California, Florida, Texas, Warsaw, Indiana, but Indianapolis, everywhere. So in one fell swoop, we saw 84 people come onto our platform saying, I want to live in Wabash. So lest you believe that maybe this might not be, not only did we see that it came true, but we also were able to see where they were coming from. A lot of them were remote workers. So Randolph County has 1,175 households of all incomes who are looking to live here every year. So every year there are 1,175 people, households, who are, when their lease comes up, they're looking for a place here. Or when their house, when they're thinking, I'm ready to move, they're looking over here first to decide whether they should put their house up for sale. 1,175 households. So who are these folks? Well, 42% are younger singles and couples. Remember, that's how many empty nesters you have right now in the population. So there's actually about 76% that are millennials. So 34% are these traditional, non-traditional families. And these stock images are important because the data goes way deeply into who are these folks, what are their buyer behaviors, who are they? And so what they depict is, these are actually people that reflect who want to move here. And then 24% are empty nesters and retirees, and usually because most of us don't want to leave our home in order to have a more accessible space, this is probably going to be a big chunk of this population are the empty nesters and retirees who already live here and are trying to relocate to something that's better suits their needs. So 76% millennials, 24% empty nesters and retirees. Any thoughts or reactions to that?
See that stat again?
76% are the millennial population, and 24% are empty nesters and retirees. Is that what you expected? Surprised? Young people want to live here. So when we think about who we're building for, the question that comes next is, and I'm not going to ask anyone's ages, but how many in the room would put themselves into the millennial category? And if you aren't a millennial, but you know what they want, what do millennials like when we think about housing? Move in ready. Ooh, good one. What else? Big, huge, 2,500 square foot out in the country on 2 acres. Yes? Some, but most no. So we're going to talk a little bit about what they want. Again, wonky. So 36% rentals, 64% home buyers. So 64% of the folks who want to live here want to buy a home here. But what do we know about how you get to the place where you want to buy a home? Do you just move from Ohio over here and just buy a house? Maybe some do, but most come by rental. So when we think about creating rentals, think about it as in terms of there may be a need to create rentals, yes, for people who never want to own, But there's probably a big chunk of that rental population who are going to use the rental as a way to figure it out, and yes, this is where I want to set down roots, and then go buy a home, okay? When we think about the big population, I guess, what is it, 46% that don't live here yet. But what's also interesting here is 54% want detached houses, but there's this 10% who want to own something different. In Indiana, we talk about villaminiums and things like that, but these attached homes that are usually going to be denser, smaller in sizes. It's just a different product than a lot of times we have. And so there's this 10% that wants more density, even in the home buyer realm. So they went through and they looked at the current rents, but it wasn't because like a market analysis might do to figure out what it should be. They're just looking at where is it now. And going back to my first question, the rents around here are $500–600 a month, right? So you're attracting people who want or can afford a product that's $500–600 a month, and you're also attracting or keeping people that can afford $125,000 a month, and that's what they're looking at is what's there now. So they look at all of these different, and look, they're looking at different places. They've got Darke County, Ohio, they've got Wayne County, they've got Delaware County. What they're looking at is what are the rent ranges in the vicinity. So $500 to $2,600 a month, and you can see the price per square foot. For resale and new construction, we're looking at $124,900 to $291,400. For resale and new construction, $215 to $1.295 million. So it's probably an outlier. But the question then becomes, this is what's here now, but what do the folks who want to live here, these potential households, what do they earn, right? We're looking, they can't find the product they want. So we have to back into it by figuring out how much do these folks make and extrapolate out of that how much they can afford. In one of the steering committees, there was a great conversation when I mentioned, what would HUD say your maximum percent of gross monthly income you should spend on housing is? And I'm going to ask steering committee not to answer, but anyone else? And of course, not USDA either.
30.
25%.
25, 30? It's 30. Thank you, that was close. 25 is probably better. It was shocked. Some people were shocked by that. I think one person was shocked because they're like, I don't spend anywhere close to 30% of my gross monthly income. But don't you know that a lot of millennials these days have student loan debt, and they're spending 50% sometimes because of the rising rents? So let's delve into what your population looks like. So when we look at how much, when we talk about, use terms like area median income, area median income was based on Randolph County. So they said, okay, this is HUD data. So a single person living in Randolph County is at 60% of area median income if they earn $31,300 or less. All right, basically we'll say $31,300. They're at 80% of area median income at $41,750, and 100% of area median income for a single person in Randolph County is $46,550. And that's adjusted by the household size. So putting this in context, when we look at what the median income is countywide right now, we were in that 62,000, right? And we said, well, the average household size was somewhere around, 2, 3. So somewhere above 100%, which is actually pretty good. So when we start to talk about market rate units, we're actually talking about units that are affordable to people at 80% of area median income and up. Anybody know about a low-income housing program or what those look like, low-income housing tax credits? Sometimes communities confuse what I call big A affordable housing with little a affordable housing. So usually low-income housing tax credits are hitting below 60% AMI. This housing analysis is designed to look at your market potential, so it isn't looking at your existing low-income populations necessarily and making housing more affordable for them specifically. A lot of times communities have a really good handle on that. What they're looking at is your market potential, the people who don't live here now. So when they talk about market rate, it's gonna be that single person or two-person household that makes 41,750 or 47,700. And then when we look at for sale units, we're looking at that 100% of area median income and up, okay? So the analysis shows 273 annual potential renters with incomes at or above 60% of area median income. Remember, that's going to be considered, you've got your workforce and affordable here, as well as market rate. So that's 750 to 1,000. Your scale doesn't go down as low as where the rents are now. And if I want to be fair, 88% of the people who want to live here would pay $1,000 to $1,250 and even up over $2,500. So the reason that they are your potential is you don't have this product right now. You don't have a product on the market that charges rents at $1,000 and up. You might. Anyone think of any that you have around $1,000 a month rental units or up?
I think this is really on point in 4 examples that we have over the course of the last 6 weeks. We've rented 1 at $1,000, we've rented 2 at $1,250, and we rented 1 at $1,750. And these are people looking to come back to the community, and so.
Wow, that's cool that you're testing this.
Well, and I like, we don't know what we don't know, and there are people wanting to come here, but if we don't have the product, they're not going to, these folks would not live in a $600 a month house.
That's it.
And so it is important that we have some faith in knowledge.
Thank you for that. And, remember, 54% of your market already lives here. So to the extent that people are moving into those units, these rental units at this higher amount, what are they doing? They're leaving behind the $500 and $600 a month units, right? So it's this interesting backward way of creating affordable housing without spending federal dollars to make it. Because a housing unit that's at $500 or $600 a month, and I want to move up to that, or I want to move up to that, I'm expecting finishes that are a bit different than what's there now. But when I move, I open up a unit for someone who may need a unit that's at $500 or $600 a month. It's a very affordable way to create affordable housing. As someone who used to spend all her time figuring out how to put public subsidies in to make markets more affordable, this is just an interesting dynamic that's happening all across Indiana that we can see.
Can I ask a question about
Yeah.
that though? Like, why wouldn't those people buy if they have that kind of thing? They just don't want to pay, or?
Not necessarily. I mean, like she said, they don't start by moving here buying. They start by moving here renting. And plus, some of them aren't ready to commit to their forever home because the market is a little bit in flux. They don't want to make a 5-year decision and be locked in. And when you figure that the majority of your first 2 to 4 years of house payments goes to the interest anyway, you're really taking very little risk by renting, as opposed to we could be in a situation where the housing market were to lose value in the home.
So I actually called them that text and they're like, "Oh, you're right for that text."
That's super interesting. Because you could get a heck of a nice house for $1,750.
Yeah, the thing about it is
I don't make that.
you would be building a starter home, or you would have to buy and renovate an older, larger home. And so what you're talking about, these are all the market dynamics at work. And when I think about, I would also add to this, some of us have the velvet handcuffs on, right? Great home, probably too big for what we need because our family's moving out. But I got it at an awesome price before all the prices went up, and I got 2% interest rate on my mortgage because I refinanced. I'm not moving. And so when you think about all of these mortgage market dynamics, the housing market dynamics, it's all working together to create an interesting opportunity for Indiana that if we heed the call, we actually will be adding housing and not having to put in as much public subsidy, right? We got to figure out what the gap is, but much more buying power among the folks who want to live here. So let's look at now condos. So a form of home ownership. Your condos are all folks that are market rate buyers. So we need 35% of those units at $150 to $175. How do you build a $150,000 to $175,000 condominium unit in a market like this? Smaller units, higher price per square foot. It's so weird. We all have wanted, I think there, at least I grew up in a generation where more is better, more square footage is better, but no, when we start to look at the buyer populations who are coming, they want smaller units, closer proximity, walkable possibly to a downtown, an active area, really great quality of life, better finishes are more important than the more square footage. So we're just spending our money differently. So when we look at your condos, you have 20 annual potential condo buyers that range from 150 to over 300,000, and I'm going to give you your sweet spots in just a moment. Potential townhome buyers. Now, again, when you were thinking about condominiums, townhomes, there are certain images that come into our mind, right? Whenever you're talking about housing, we all have our own lens. So when you think about townhomes, what do you think of? What does a townhome look like, or what does a condo look like to you? Let's start with condos. Apartment buildings, right? Condominiums are, I'm going to show you a few that are not apartment. They actually wouldn't even know it was a condo, okay? Townhomes, we think, oh, these skinny brownstones, could be that, could be other things. But the idea is just density. It means we have common wall home ownership. So in this case, we have 57 annual potential townhouse buyers at market rate buyers, 150 to over 300,000. Now this is the one that really hits home because most of our housing stock is single family detached. So 442 annual potential house buyers at 60% AMI or up. So we're talking workforce and workforce affordable and market rate together. So 4% are in that 100 to 125 range. So we only have the market potential who's looking to live here, only a small slice are looking for what you have on the market. Let's say 10% are looking for, if it were available today, they're looking to live here at those price points. The other 90% are at 150 to over 300,000. And again, I'm going to show you your sweet spots because I think it'll tell a better story. So what should they be at for the workforce and affordable rents and prices? Rental apartments should be between $750 to $1,200. And look at that price per square foot, rent per square foot. That's what you pay attention to in these because again, we're talking probably smaller units and better finishes that hit those prices in the case of especially market rate. Detached houses, 135 to 195. So even if, remember I told you your median home price here is like, what, 116, did I say that? Somewhere in there. Even your detached houses will probably go for more if they actually are modern enough, the existing stock. For workforce affordable, 135 to 195. Let's look at market rate. So for market rate, rental apartments, we need $950 to $1,700. You're pushing up over that, and these are very conservative numbers, I'll say that. So you look at that, again, rent per square foot. For condos, 150 to 225. You're looking at that, again, that price per square foot, 173 to 176. And then townhomes, 235 to 290. I mean, we're talking housing that is connected at 235 to 290. And then the detached homes at 195 to 350. Now my guess is in this state, we're going to be at 250 before we can do new construction, which means if we are going to get into any renovation type projects, we have the ability to do an acquisition, what I call an acquisition rehab for resale. I mean, I saw that gorgeous house, Steve, coming in on the street, that brand new one, huge, gorgeous home. I mean, you're talking, that's more of the standard, not necessarily huge. I mean, that could have been a fourplex. I'll show you a cool one that looks kind of like that. But big question is I've showed you 1,175 people every year are looking, but how many are we actually gonna absorb? Because what we don't wanna do is overbuild. And so what the analysis does is takes 20 to 25% of rentals, condominiums, and townhomes, and about 7.5 to 12% of the potential for the home buyers. So very, very conservative estimates. So for Winchester, if we were looking at 620 is the market potential here, you can see for Randolph County. Winchester is expected to take 41% of the total. Why? Because Winchester's better? Because Winchester is currently 41% of the overall makeup of the county. So that's the only reason. So if Winchester decided to take action, it's going to need to build 19 to 24 new rentals every single year to keep up with its market potential, 4 to 5 condos, 5 to 7 townhomes, and 9 to 16 single family. But ultimately, we don't know who's going to take action here, right? We know some are already looking at it, but for those who do, we're needing 46 to 58 rentals every year, 4 to 5 condos, 11 to 14 townhomes, and 23 to 39 single-family detached for-sale units in the price points that we talked about. You think that's doable? We're talking hundreds of housing units every year. Anyone know how many we've done so far this year? Or maybe last year?
4 in Union City, 6 in Winchester.
4 in Union City, all right, okay.
5 or 6.
All right, so let's say 10 so far.
6 in Winchester.
16. Okay, and these are all single-family detached? So we're getting close. Any rentals going in those higher? Not yet. So, harkening back to the Northeast Indiana Regional Market Potential Analysis. So back in about 2019, measured, remember I told you there was like 21,000 households of all incomes looking around those 10 counties. Ultimately, we figured out we needed 15,000 housing units over 5 years in order to keep up with our own market potential. 15,000 over 5 years. We kind of did what I just did today and looked up and said, hey, you know, it's been almost 5 years. How many have we actually built? Anyone want to take a guess how many we built? Because we did the analysis. We found out we had market potential. We did this. We're like, oh, we've got market potential. Now what? Guess? Any guesses? Let me just tell you one more thing. 15,000 housing units, and we needed 64% to be single-family detached, 36% rental. So first question is, how many do you think we did in the 10 counties around Allen over that almost 5-year period? 5,134 units, a third. And I told you we needed 64% home buyer and 36% rental. What percent rental do you think we did? 6. Because that's what we do in Indiana, right? We're used to single-family detached for home ownership. So what happens to the more denser product that's actually going to attract the folks that we're talking about today that want to live here? They just never come. So my hope is we don't look up 5 years from now and go, hey, remember that analysis we did? We were going to be able to do a lot of houses. What did we do? 20. Home buyer, right? No, we want to be tracking this. And that's what this group, the steering committee, is going to do going forward. Is they're going to ask you, we're asking you to participate in every way you can in championing this so that in 5 years, one, somebody in the room knows what that permit total is for the county because we're tracking it on a quarterly basis. Because honestly, what gets measured gets done. So we've got a good metric, we just need to take it to that next level and start putting housing into production. So one of the things that's really cool that we're working on for the counties in Northeast Indiana, they're doing a regional pattern book. It's really cool. So you see these? These are actually condos, those are apartments. Those could be rentals, those could be home buyer units. But the idea here is they're sitting in a single-family detached neighborhood. It just looks like a McMansion sitting there, right? You've got 2 doorways coming into that. So when we think about what condominium looks like and what apartments look like and what townhomes look like, we have to sort of change our view, because you can actually build it into the context of a neighborhood beautifully, through infill even, like some of these. And so thinking about what happens next, well, first thing is we're going to be building, we could do close to 600 housing units over the next 5 years if we get to work and start going. Now, I'm going to do a little calculator here. So let's say 600 housing units. Let's just make a rough number. So 600 housing units. And what percent are we going to build that are going to be single-family detached for home buyer? 50? 50%. Let's do that. So 300. So 300 housing units over the next 5 years. And we have this awesome tool called residential TIF, because Ryan's going to be talking about what governments do next and how they get involved. And when you look at if we were to build that, and I'm just going to say conservatively, and we establish TIFs in all those places, it's about $15 million worth of new investment in real estate taxes. And remember, we're now pulling people from the next state over. We're pulling people who are commuting to work at a distance, maybe a retention risk for an employer, who are now bringing their income taxes with them into the county. And so you have this multiplier effect. Are the schools here today? Yeah, well, okay. So when we think about the school districts, we want to make sure we plan alongside, right? So having this conversation about bringing new families into the district and bringing new taxes into the district, we got to make sure that what we're doing is also building the infrastructure necessary, along with schools, along with parks, along with downtowns, to make sure. So having those additional real estate taxes and the tax revenue that comes with it needs to be reinvested into our infrastructure, our downtowns, and making sure that those upper floors are converted into apartments, for instance, and that we're looking at our infrastructure, walkability, bikeability, whatever, all of those pieces that make a community great. We want to make sure that we're looking at that as part of the picture. So there is an actual return on investment for governments that get involved in this, that we're hoping will become that, start that flywheel. So as I start to wrap up, the question I have is, this is where Ryan and I will kind of tag team on this, and then he's going to go into what are we going to do next? How do we take action on this, and how does the hub support you as we do that? So I just want to start a conversation on housing availability. What housing opportunities do you think exist throughout Randolph County, and what are the barriers to housing production? Because, and I guess this is a group of very important people sitting around this table, this is the first of many conversations you're going to have on a county and even individual community basis. But when we think about, okay, we need to start building hundreds of housing units every year, what comes to mind is, oh, we got to make sure we include this area, and on the other side, but we've got to address this if it's going to happen. Anything holding developers back?
Two things. One, that we're ready to do lots of infrastructure within the community. The other thing is from a remote worker standpoint, the first question we got was remote workers. We have high-speed internet. By the way, that house is 5 miles from the nearest town. And the answer is just no. Well, we got really good satellite based on that. So,
What you just named is the #1 non-starter. So are there plans moving forward around high-speed internet? Oh, not to put anyone on the, no one, this is, you know.
Three different providers, yes, that one of the bids provide
Do you think that there's room for a conversation around that if we included that as part of our strategy, that we start bringing together at least that conversation as it relates to housing, or do you feel like it's I mean, should it be included in our strategy as we need to work on this as we're working on housing?
And the county is.
Okay, so it's an ongoing initiative. Okay.
Our pockets in the county that have that.
All right, well, maybe we start there. Are they pockets that could grow?
I think there's that present not ROI for the provider, right? Like if there's not enough where they are running it to onboard one household as a big bill.
Yes.
So like those areas of density, there's ways to grow faster.
So that is the epicenter when we talk about these catalyst projects. Sorry, let's see, I just keep myself, I am a shepherd's hook. So when we talk about catalyst sites, I get contacted by internet. There's a group, and I cannot think of their name, but they've only called me 10 different times about all of our communities. And what they do is they go in and they help to write grants for communities to get money for that internet. What they wanted to know was, how are you guys doing what you're doing? Because we think you have your catalyst sites, which are typically 30 to 40 units apiece, are enough to help us to make a case for making a bigger project for a community. So I guess my point being, you could start to say, we're only going to focus on sites that are served by enough adequate internet, high-speed internet. And you could have a second tier that says, but these are the areas that we should do catalyst sites as well, because they're areas that we need to be, that would be attractive, and potentially we look at bringing high-speed internet in through them. So as we think about, as we think about those big hotspots, that's what we're going to be looking at next. And so when we come out and have a conversation like this, you may go home, like you're a processor, like sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh, I wish I had said that. What we have is on our website, and we'll send this out as a follow-up to everyone, a button you can push that says, hey, I know of a site you should think about. And as you submit that kind of information, it could be a site that a local government is looking to develop, but you don't know what to do next, and the hub can help with that. It may be a site where you as a developer want to take action, but you're running into barriers, and we can help connect you with the local unit of government on that. But the idea is we want to bring back in that next conversation with the steering committee sites that you all think, this is where we need to be looking, and no, it's not served, or yes, it is served, but we need to be looking at that as a place where we build. What else? Is that the number one thing? Is it internet? Okay.
From a rural perspective, definitely. Our population centers have it, but if you want to get anywhere outside of all the population centers, it's awesome.
So this is a big infrastructure conversation we'll be having. This is great. I mean, that's a good conversation to be having. Well, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan, and he's going to sort of finish this out and take you through the next steps, which get really exciting. He's going to show you some examples of communities that have taken action and how awesome it is. But I will say, Ryan knows all the ins and outs, bumps and bruises of how this works going forward. And while my little map looked like this and this windy road, I would also say it's not just windy, it's bumpy. And so as we stay together over the next few months to get this going, I encourage you to support what the steering committee is working on.
I'm going to go ahead and get started again. So we've talked now about what your market potential is, what the data shows. And the question for this group and that the steering committee is going to determine is, what do we do with this? As Heather alluded to before the break, it's great to have that information, but in some ways it's worse to have it and not take action on it than it is to not have it at all. We don't want to look back in 2 years and 5 years and see what ifs. We want to make sure that there's action that results from this. And so that's part of the unique role that the hub will play. That's why we are engaged for a longer period of time than just coming in for a few months to do a study and say good luck, here's the information, is that we have a lot of experience in helping communities take action on And that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about that because I'm the person from our team that usually leads that. So I'll be working with the steering committee, and I'm going to share some examples of what this looks like in action, because it's not easy to do. If it was easy, you know, we would have figured this out already, because the opportunity is huge for our community, right? There's a lot of money, there are a lot of businesses, there's a lot that's at stake that goes into this. And in order to really successfully take action, we have to all be working in the same direction. And so that's a big part of this meeting here today, why the steering committee has individually identified each of you as being somebody who should be here to hear this information, is because we need your help to decide what action to take and then to overcome barriers to be able to do that. So I'm going to walk through first, I guess, some broad categories on, you know, what we need to do in order to be able to take action. So the first is setting the table for quality development. One of the issues that oftentimes comes up is we have practical barriers that are in place in the form of building codes and regulations, zoning, things like that, that are going to prevent us from taking action in the way that the market potential analysis has described. So I'll walk through, but Heather has referenced the Wabash project a couple times. That was a prime example. That was an infill project on the site of an old hospital in the middle of a neighborhood very close to town. The mayor led this effort with the steering committee to put together this awesome site design and site plan, and they sat back and they said, you know, there's no part of this that our current zoning codes would actually support. And so I said, when's the last time those zoning codes have been updated? He said, oh, 1964. And so that was the impetus then for them to update a lot of their zoning codes based specifically on that project. We didn't do it just for that project. We did it comprehensively, but they said this is the sort of development, whether it's small scale or larger scale, that we need to be able to support. And so as we have these conversations with each of the communities and countywide, there may be some issues that come up on that front that we decide that we need to address. The second is trying to make sure we do everything possible to lower the risks that are involved in this. You know, risk is the reason why we don't see you know, a lot of these developments actually go. And so there are risks along the lines of the development itself and the time that it's going to take to get something like this off the ground. So we have seen a phenomenon in some of the communities where we work, where communities have had sites that they have shopped. I was just in another community this morning, and we were touring a site, and they said, we've already taken 2 or 3 developers around this, and they just don't want to work with us on this. And they don't really want to work on it because the community didn't have any experience doing that. And it's just like a black hole for the developer to get involved and thinking, how long is this going to take? How much are we going to have to invest? And so part of our role is going to be working on behalf of the community, because we do have experience, we do have a track record that the developers will be able to have some confidence in to try to eliminate that risk. The other thing that we will need to have discussions on are how do we strategically invest resources that we know are scarce public resources. So, you know, everybody in local government has looked at projects before where a developer is asking for something for the project to do that. And many communities are very averse, or at the very least hesitant to do that, because they don't have a good frame of reference to make that decision on, right? It all seems the same when a developer is asking for something to make a project work. What we want to do is help to, number one, prioritize the projects themselves based on the community's input, saying these are our top sites that we would like to see developed. And second is we will work on projects where a developer is leading it to help vet the financials of that, to make sure that this is a really reasonable ask for the community. On K.I.S.S projects that are community-led that we're working on behalf of the community, that is going to be part of the whole financial process with that community. So they will be able to understand not just the financial ask, but what's the return on investment from us, making an investment in a development? What is that going to look like? As Heather shared just in her quick calculation before we broke, in many of these developments, there's an enormous return for the local unit of government. In fact, we've worked on some where the projects have really stood on their own. It's been a timing issue with the funds more than it has been a real gap in the funds. And so that's the sort of information that we want to work with you over the next year or so to be able to provide on the developments that are prioritized by the leadership of being the highest priority. So with that as a framework, those are some of the big pieces of what we're going to work on to address. I want to lay out just this idea of catalyst projects. Heather referenced this a couple times. We've got a same diagram of a roadmap for a catalyst project, so the steps are different from the first one that she showed. We're going to do three things at the conclusion of this session. And I'll highlight this again. You'll notice we've sat out on the table these information things. There's a QR code at the bottom. For those of you who will scan that QR code, that will take you to our website. We are going to ask for your input on projects, and we mean that in the broadest sense possible. We are going to try to identify a whole range of projects that are maybe ready, maybe just ideas that exist here within the county. We want to do that for a few reasons, because what we see are a couple different things after we release this market potential information. First is, you may have some developers who own sites, have been thinking about doing something, maybe even have plans in place, and just having this information will be enough for them to move ahead with that. We've seen that in other communities. Those typically are smaller in scale, but they might be medium to large as well. Second is, we've got developers who have sites that maybe thought someday we'll do something. We don't have any plans together, but that's an idea that we want to learn about, because we might be able to help them go from idea to an actual project. And the third is, we want to have individual conversations with each of the communities that were listed in that market potential to see what is the local government leadership's willingness to move forward and initiate a project on their own, what we would call a catalyst site that we would do on their behalf. So this roadmap, it starts with, the process starts with what's the community's vision and priorities. So we as the Housing Resource Hub would not come here to Union City and just do a project with a developer that the mayor hadn't told us, we want you to be engaged and help with this project. This is a top priority that the Union City wants to see become housing. That's how we work. That's our roots in working with local government. So in doing that, the first step, if the mayor were to say that to me, would to say, what's the community vision for this site? What do you want to see this look like? Because too often, communities are in a position where we're kind of on our heels, right? We have a developer come to us with a plan, and we feel like we have to either do a thumbs up or a thumbs down to that. And the risk of doing a thumbs up, if it's not really what we think was best, is what if it doesn't work out? There's a lot at stake, and we oftentimes can remember projects for generations that did not work, and they'll still be referred to by the names of the people that initiated those, and they didn't work. The risk of, so we want to try to say, what do you want to do? Because if we don't take action, that's a risk too, because we know we desperately need housing, and so we don't want to, turn away somebody that wants to do that. So we want to set with the community, what's your vision? What is this going to look like? How is it going to, work with your utilities, infrastructure, your capacity, the amenities that are nearby, the location, all those things to get that in place. Second is, we want to have an actual agreement with the community to say we are going to lead pre-development on this site. This is a way we're taking away risk from a developer, that we will look at, what is it going to cost in order to create this vision that the community has outlined, and who's a high capacity development partner that would be willing to step in and to help do that, and utilizing their talents as well. And so I'll walk through exactly what that looks like. That's the next step. Third then is we want to be able to establish site control on the site. If we start talking about a site and planning for it and word gets out there, it's never going to come to fruition because people are going to speculate on that site, right? We've seen this happen in other communities before where there's been speculation, and to this day some of these sites have never had development occur because of that reason. Next is we're going to assemble a development team including an experienced high-quality developer that'll walk alongside us with this, because we want to blend, what is it that the community wants with what's, reality here, what is going to work, and, that we have a track record of somebody that's done that before. Then we're going to complete the pre-development work. So that's going to be creating the site concept. It's going to be doing testing, if it's an existing structure, doing environmental testing. If it's a farm field, doing soils testing. We're going to do all the things to eliminate risk so we can get down to good numbers on what's it going to cost, and what are the sources that are available, and is there a gap, if there's a gap. That's where we call finalizing the capital stack. Once we have that in place, then we go back to the community, and it's up to them to make a go or no-go decision. And sometimes this is based on, quite often it's based on the financial picture. What's that capital stack look like? How many resources are we bringing to the table? What's the return on investment going to be for whatever the community has put into a project like that? So that's the roadmap that we'll follow for what we call a catalyst site development. So catalyst site, we got the dictionary definition here of a catalyst, a substance that increases the rate of a chemical reaction without undergoing any permanent chemical change. We use that because that's what this is intended to be, right? We're not advocating for us setting up shop here and being your permanent developer forever, or the local government perpetually coming up with sites. We're saying there's a gap. We need to prove out the market. We need to show that this works, and we need to get some units at these higher price points in here before the banks and lenders will accept that there are comps in the market. And so there are going to be gaps on both sides of the equation that's going to make it really risky and difficult for developers to just step in based only on having this information and say, yeah, I'll do that. I'll put myself out there because I have total confidence in this information. So we will really try to identify. We want your help, as Heather alluded to before she concluded her portion, with identifying what are potential catalyst sites that would be great for the community. And so once we identify a list of those, it will be up to each community to decide, do we want to take action or not? And if they don't take action, that's okay. That means that market potential breakdown that we looked at, and how many units each different community would absorb, that will shift. Communities that don't take action, some of their market potential may shift to another community that is taking action, that is bringing those new units to market. And so trying to identify that, we've got an example right now in another community where the steering committee, there's a guy who is a small-scale developer on there. He's got a project, he's got site plans, everything is laid out, and the community does not want to take action on that. They're not really involved, and it's not just his development, they're just not really involved in the process. They don't really want to grow, they don't want to do that, and so that is a project that, if it was in a different community, would be way, way up here on the list. Countywide, but because it's in a community that's not interested in taking action, it's fallen way down, and it's just going to kind of continue to languish. And so those are the sorts of things that we'll have to work through as we look at trying to identify what that happens. So a few slides, I've hit on this, but I want you to understand what each of these phases of this pre-development process looks like. So the first phase is the visioning. And it gets back to, you know, we don't want to just drop a bunch of housing units in a community, right? It's not just about the numbers. It's about what is that going to look like? How is that going to take advantage of, you know, resources, amenities, factor into the quality of life? If we just put a bunch of units in, we may not meet the market potential because it might not be exactly, you know, playing to the strengths of that community. So we want to vision this. So another example I've got right now, we've got a community, they own a site, it's perfect for development, utilities right up to it, but there's some level of concern about the surrounding property owners and what, not that they're against it, but just that it's not going to be suitable neighbors for residential. And so, you know, the community has decided if we can design the site in a way that will mitigate some of those issues, that they would like to proceed with that. So we're putting into place a vision for that that's more than just about how many units can we cram on there. It's about let's make it fit the space, let's make it fit the surroundings, the community. That's what this is about. You don't necessarily get that when it's a developer-led process, right? That's more of a financially driven you know, process. And so that's part of what we're trying to balance with this. Second is pre-development. So a big part of the pre-development is oftentimes the assembly of land or properties. So our ideal situation is the community owns something, right? They've taken action ahead of time, and we'll talk through a couple examples what that looks like. And they have a site, and they say, yes, we've just been waiting for you to come along, and you know, here's our site. Oftentimes they say, well, no, this is owned by, you know, this family that we think would be willing to sell, or this individual that lives out of state, and we have to go about trying to assemble those properties on behalf of the community so that we can even get to that development piece. The team I mentioned, doing any kind of environmental analysis on the site to eliminate that as a risk, making sure we align what that site vision is with the market potential analysis is a really important part. You know, as Heather referenced, if we just let the developers do what they do, it's going to look the same as what we've always had. So we need to push the envelope with them to make sure that it aligns with what those needs are. So pre-development, there's a lot of steps. This is the full list of all the steps that go into pre-development that we do. I'm not going to walk through all those because you'd be bored to tears, but there's a lot of things that go into that in order to make this happen. Any questions on the process itself? Do you understand as I walk through that kind of what the value is that we're trying to add here to make this different from just letting the market happen? Yeah? Okay. I'm going to take your silence as consent that yes, this is something that you're following with me on. But so Northeast Indiana, where we're based, as Heather referenced, we've got about 500 units in various stages of development right now in these following communities. I'm going to highlight a couple of them because for me at least, this always gets a lot more real when you talk about a real example versus just walking, you know, through the steps on a road map or something like that. So, town of Topeka, Indiana, which is in LaGrange County, small community, about 1,000 to 1,500 people who live there, but with their workforce, they grow to about 4,000 people during the day. And so they have ample opportunity for folks who want to live there to be closer to where they work. They actually took this step. They were one of our, when we started doing work in LaGrange County, the town manager approached and said, you know, we bought a piece of property a few years ago with the idea that we were going to control this and then just flip it to a developer. And we've been working for 2 years and we can't get a developer that will take on this project. And the reason is because the financial gap of what I've already described. So we went about our process, which you'll recognize these steps. We put a small steering committee together of leadership from the town. The town committed funding for us to do pre-development, to put together a design on that and do the legwork to eliminate the risk. They'd already purchased it. They had already done some preliminary platting on that. We finalized the site concept, and then we completed the capital stack. So this is like the main street in Topeka would be right here. This is just like a certain near downtown neighborhood like you have here. And these are the two parcels that are highlighted in red, which was the farm field that they had purchased. Now they paid a pretty big price for those parcels. They paid over $1.25 million for those, and without really having a disposition plan at the time, you know, just on faith that they could flip that. Now, they have a unique circumstance there of extremely high land prices because there's a lot of Amish in the area, and the Amish are buying up farmland for cash for about as much as, you know, anybody could imagine paying. So they felt like this was a good risk. But then they were getting a little nervous when we came in a couple years, you know, after they bought it, and they were still sitting with it after that time and no real pathway forward. So the first step that we did is we put together a site concept. And so we work with an architect that understands, you know, housing very well and our methodology. Put this together. This is a multi-phased development. You'll see there's 151 units total. And it's got a mix of lake cottages, family homes, a pocket neighborhood, villas. Spoiler alert, that's what their market potential said they needed. That's why we laid it out that way. This was to align with, you know, what are people looking for that want to move to Topeka. And so, you know, like I said, they had infrastructure to the edge of the site, but there's still a substantial infrastructure cost just based on the size of this development. You know, we've got over here kind of the results of our pre-development analysis in terms of what the optimum market position were for those units, what the absorption was, and who the target market is. You know, I highlighted the different types, which are also shown here on this slide, because, you know, we wanted to be able to get multiple segments of their market potential in this. So this project was unique because the town was all ready to do a TIF bond on this based on the residential TIF return, and then READY came along as a program. Northeast Indiana got $50 million. We said, should we, you know, apply on your behalf for infrastructure costs for this for just a little over $3 million? We said the positive is, you know, it's $3 million you won't have to bond for and spend. The downside is it's going to slow down our timeline a lot, which it has. We were successful. We received that award. We are just now actually receiving that money, and so work is slated to begin there. You know, we'll do as much as we can over the winter in terms of infrastructure, but it'll be spring for a lot of the final work to be done there. So that's one example. That's, you know, community purchasing, you know, farm field. Talk about the town of LaGrange, which has a different type of project. They had a downtown site that was their top priority. And they said, I'll show you the map of what existed there, but we did the same process. Steering committee created, town committed pre-development funds. We put options in place with property owners. We did a bunch of environmental work and finalized the site concept, and we're completing the capital stack right now. So they identified, this is like the main corner. Many of you probably haven't been to the town of LaGrange, but Highway 9, Highway 20, busiest intersection in the whole county. These are all the different parcels. Just to give you an idea of the current uses for this, vacant gas station, vacant thrift store, family residence, vacant community foundation building, empty parking lots, and then the utility district for the county. So not exactly the, you know, welcome to the town of LaGrange that they wanted, the busiest intersection at the corner, but also a really, really complicated project to do. We've got all these different property owners. This is a gas station, for those of you that are in, you know, that's big environmental concerns. Got another gas station over here you can't see. We got another dry cleaner over here you can't see. So we were really worried going into this, like, is this even going to be possible? But this is a case where we follow what the community wants. This was their top priority. They knew this is not going to be the easiest project, this is not going to be the cheapest project to do, but it's never going to get done. In fact, I mean, the town manager has told me our backup plan is to just let all that go, and there's like a ice cream store that wants to move in there, right? So, I mean, not a great plan B, which, I mean, he readily acknowledges. So the first step of this, before we did really anything, was to see, can we get control of these sites? And kind of miraculously, we were able to, for a reasonable cost, get options in place with all those sites. Community Foundation actually donated their site. They said, we would love to see this happen. We're willing to be a part of this project by donating this if you can make this work. And then the second piece, before we got too far along, was let's do some environmental testing. Because when we get that pre-development budget that the community puts forward, we want to be very, very diligent about how we spend that. So we don't want to waste money on things that are not going to be useful. First up was doing testing. We actually found that, yeah, there's some environmental concerns there, but things that can be mitigated without breaking the bank. And so that gave us then the green light to move ahead. We put together a site design. This was based on the extreme need for rental and the town's desire to want to capture a rental, that they didn't have anything that was very suitable quality rentals. So you can see this is designed. This is also designed in a way, when I talk about the uniqueness of each site and how we try to design it to mitigate that. We've got two highways here, which is kind of difficult when we think of building residential on that. And so we've tried to take advantage of both the terrain, which you can't really see on here, but also we've got worked in, there's some parking here, and then we've got some commercial on this side to try to buffer that a little bit. Along the back, you can see we've got some townhomes back here. So this is a way we can go in, incrementally to meet the small demand that they have for townhomes there. And then quite a bit of parking. Parking was a big issue, not because it's that hard to find a parking space in LaGrange, but because, we got the two highways here, so you can't easily, park a block away and cross over one of those highways. And so making sure that we designed that in a way, that was the town's primary concerns, and that we were able to, take those into account on this. This is one where the capital stack has been really, really tall, because this is such a complicated project. Any of the downtown projects are just involve a lot more in terms of what's needed to make that work. And so we've actually got a call, I think, next week, Madison, with them to finalize the capital stack on this. And we believe that one is going to move forward as well. So any questions on either of those two? I hope that highlights, or from conceptual down to like what does this look like in a community. If not, I'll keep rolling on here. This is what I do unless somebody, Vince?
I'm from Central Indiana, and a lot of the towns in Central Indiana are doing that kind of thing. They're leveling a lot of downtown, upco something new. What's around that? Does that fit in, like in range? Does that fit in with what's?
Yeah, that's a great question. That actually it does in LaGrange. I mean, that was one of the very first questions that we asked, is how can this fit with what is on that main street? Joe. I mean, because it doesn't always, to your point. And we've got another downtown project in another community right now where the community, that the mayor in particular, has been really adamant. We want to save these buildings, and we are working extremely hard to try to save those buildings, but they are just in such terrible shape that we're nervous how much this is going to cost. And it's not us, I mean, it's back to the community. What this is going to be, a gap that maybe is too tall for them. But what we've done is to say, we're going to exhaust that. We have a site design for reusing the space. We also have a cost estimate on, if that is prohibitive, what it would look like, and that ultimately it's going to be the city's call in that case on which direction to go, because it's going to be them stepping in to try to figure out how we make up the huge financial difference.
She wanted to save the city's identity. I mean, you don't want to just.
Exactly. You're right, and I mean that's a big part of this. The LaGrange example is a little different because what is there right now is not historic at all. It's not even. I mean, it's not even really that nice looking. I mean, this has just kind of been a piecemeal block here of a bunch of things that have evolved over time, which is a different situation than if we have, a nice row of downtown, historic brick front buildings, which is the case in the other community that I'm referencing. That is what that looks like. So good question. I appreciate you asking that. So when we talk about building the capital stack, I've got a slide here. I'm not going to go into a tremendous amount of detail on this, but what we want to do is look at all of the available public and private tools. That's part of our role in this process. Developers know what they can bring to the table and do. Communities kind of know what they have available. We know the things that are cutting edge. We're actually, working to create some new tools. Heather's really been, a statewide leader over a long, long time. Advocating, as far as 15 years back for the creation of the first residential TIF when they expanded that out of Marion County specifically. And so, we're taking really a leading role in trying to continue to create more tools, both statewide but within local communities. We've worked in a couple of our communities with the Community Foundation. We've worked on, with one community, had a really substantial base of global employers, and they wanted to put money up and create a fund that would support development in that community. And so all those things, based on the tapestry of what exists, is on the table and what we're trying to be able to pull together. But we will also, the bread and butter are all the things on here that you're familiar with. Looking at, the TIF as a tool, both residential and commercial. Ready as new rounds of that get ready to be made available here early next year. And then also, looking at what is it going to take to keep these affordable. We want to make sure that we are conscious of the affordability. As Heather said, a big part of what we see happen are looking at the percentage of folks that want to move who already live here, helping to create our overall affordability as we meet some of the higher price points that aren't seen here. Any questions on any of that? So that kind of takes us back to where I started by talking about, which is one of the action items and the thing that you can do coming away from here is to go and scan this. There's a button on here under the Randolph County page that says, what does it say, Madison?
Request help with my project.
Request help with my project. I always forget exactly what it says. It's a little black button on there, request help with my project. And this is available, so we want, if you are aware of a project, somebody that is, if you're a developer obviously and you're here and you have a project, that's fine. If you know of somebody that's trying to get something started, that's fine. If you're a community leader, we want you to put that in there. If you're a lender or, we want you to go in there and talk about the products that you have so we can, make sure we bring those to the table. We haven't even gotten to the buyer and renter side yet, which we've, that will be a lot more on that's forthcoming. As Heather kind of alluded to, we're really heavy right now on identifying the opportunities so we can create units, and then we've got a lot of ways that we can reach and tools that we can use to help engage those buyers and renters. But you're going to see more about this. We're going to work with the steering committee on how we can publicize this, put the word out for folks to provide input on that. But as many people as you know who are involved, tell them. I mean, this is an opportunity for them and an opportunity for all of us. We will take all of those responses that come in back to the steering committee and ask them to kind of prioritize those. They're going to ask probably for more information on some of them. and we will work to collect that so that we can come up with a prioritization of how we want to take action. We want to take action, but we want to do it in a way that doesn't exclude anybody that wants to be part of this. So, again, this is what I just said on here. Communities, builders, banks and lenders, there's a role for everybody. We're going to need everybody in order to make this work. Questions, comments? Yes.
So I have a question that occurred to me after she was done speaking, but
Yes.
Since at least one top candidate for the Republican nomination for governor has said, let's do away with state income tax, has that been considered as a potential on like how that impacts the benefit to governments of people moving in?
The financial benefit?
Yeah, the financial tax. If there's no income tax, having remote workers is not going to be as helpful for the on that
Yeah.
side of things.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we've talked about and we're watching to see, you know, what happens with that. I mean, what we have found in most of the communities where we have, you know, actually worked on these developments are the property taxes alone that result from these developments are usually so great that, you know, a lot of times we don't even get into calculating the income taxes because it has to be based obviously on the new income. Who are we drawing here versus not already here? Most other communities have said, no, we don't even really want to track that. We know there's going to be some benefit and that's enough. So it's not like it's going to, I mean, it's a piece, don't get me wrong, but it's not like it would be the primary piece just because of the property tax benefits are so great for the local units. Thank you. Other questions? Go on the website, give us the information. You know, there's a contact us button on there if there's other things that you want to share that you were too shy to speak up about today, because we need you to be part of this to make it successful. So thanks for your time today. Look forward to more soon.